Hello, welcome everyone to the first episode of using and getting started with SolidWorks. So let's go through this right now. Got files. We're going to do file new. And we have three options here. We got part, assembly, and drawing. We're going to go and start off with a part. So let's go ahead and do that. We will look into doing the assemblies and drawings, but you always want to start off with your traditional part. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Okay. Moment now. Okay, so if you're familiar to any other CAD software such as like Inventor or Fusion, it has a similar setup here. So we have our features, which pretty much produces our 3D models, and we have sketches. We'll use this, which is like our 2D sketches, to basically design the actual part, and then the sketch will then use the features to create your solid model. In addition to that, we also have these other features such as sheet metal. We'll be using this sometimes for robotics. If we send it to our sponsor to, say, get a sheet metal bent for a design. We have weldments. We won't really need to use this that much, so we can just ignore that. And then direct editing is useful as well. You mainly use this for, say, you want to modify your part without having to necessarily modify your features. This is good for like our 3D printing parts. Yeah, and then evaluate is where you could measure your part and all that jazz. We may also look into using simulation to kind of get an idea of static and dynamic loads. This is what we call as FEA, or finite element analysis, and we can use this to understand like stresses in the parts, to say if we had a climber mechanism or anything involving with, I don't know, lifting up another robot, and we have a cantilevered force, we'd probably use something like this. But in the meantime, we'll be mainly focusing on sketches and features. There's also other tools as well. If you just right click, there's surfaces and mold tools, for example, but I don't think we'll be going into that. Alright, so let's get started with making a sketch. So you can tell, you can select your planes, front, top, right planes, and one thing to note is our orientation. So you can see that Y is actually pointing upwards, so that's why our top plane is this way. However, if you're running a 3D printer, for example, you may want to actually design your parts as if the top plane was the front, because that's where your Z-axis is. And on a 3D printer, or say a CNC mill, if you want to machine something, you need to understand that the orientation is positive for on the upwards area in the Z direction. But for now, we're just gonna do top plane, or let me quit that really quick. We'll do top plane here. There we go. And we'll just sketch a quick part here. So just give you basic functionalities. We're in sketch mode right now. So lines can give you, just your standard straight lines you can make, right? One neat feature about SolidWorks is you have the shaded sketch contours. You can turn this off if you don't really like it, but this is a good tool to know that you have an enclosed shape. So that way you can create a solid model. So for example, if I go back to features and do an extrude model, you can see I can make this part. However, say I didn't have it enclosed, just like this. I mean, it's obvious, but if I were to put it really close to it, and you wouldn't be able to tell. So like right about here, you would think it's enclosed. However, when you look at the sketching, it doesn't shade inside, so that means it's not enclosed. And when I try to extrude, well, look at here, it doesn't give me, it gives me an error basically. It won't create the solid part. So just some neat features to look into. I think initially it's not enabled, so you should probably click this. It'll be to your own benefit. Okay, so going back to sketches, you have your standard. You can create circles. You can do multiple types. You can do perimeter circle, so you select perimeter, 3 points. You have your spline tools. You can create splines. You have rectangles. You have multiple options as well. So you can select it here, or when you actually click on to the rectangle, the center rectangle, you actually have the options here as well. So you have corner rectangles, 3-point, and all that. And you can mess with that. Next is your arcs. So we have center point arcs, your standard. You can create center point arcs like that. I believe the direction is always clockwise. So, oh, there we go. Never mind. You gotta work in counterclockwise. Okay. So you just kind of have to finick it to get it working. And we have tangent circles as well, but I need a line. So say I have a line here, boom, and we can create a tangent from that. I won't really go into ellipsoids, but you can mess with that, with ellipses and parabolas and all that. Slots are pretty useful. You can use this to create your slots. Say we have holes in our part and it needs to be slotted. This is what we would use for that tool. You can also create different geometric slots, so like an arc slot, like this as well. So not just necessarily straight slots, you can do arc slots. We can also do polygons. You can see we have different features here. We got 6, so we have a standard hexagon. You can make that very easily. Alright, and lastly we have sketch fillets. So say I have a rectangle here. So let me just drag this on here. And you can use sketch fillets to click on these corners here. And it will actually do a 2D fillet. So let me just increase this to something more easy to see. So you can do 0.5 and it actually modifies the drawing. Simple enough. Go ahead and close that. Delete. Alright, and of course you can add points and you can do letters as well. So I can say hello everyone, and I can change the font size. So you can do it based either from points or by units. So units is like in inches. So we can do like, I don't know, 1 inch. And what's neat is you can also extrude this as well. So it's actually a solid sketch. And that is one thing actually that the contours does not pick up. So just keep that in mind. Alright. And then the next step is to go ahead. We'll just create a simple shape, a rectangle, and the most useful tool. If you notice that this box here, this rectangle, it's blue. That means it is unconstrained, or also known as underdefined, and you can see it right here. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's it's constrained. So we're going to use the Smart Dimension tool. So it's right here in this corner. So I'm going to click that, and we can highlight it and just snap through. We can do 4 inches, for example, and we can do it again. So you can click onto this line, or you can, like any sort of dimensioning tool, you can click onto edges, and let's make this 3 inches, for example. So now it's fully defined, and it's black, so that means it's fully constrained, fully defined, and it says it right here just to make sure. You can notice that these units are in inches, and if you want to change that, it's onto this bottom right corner. So you can do millimeters, inches. Another neat fact that you can do is say I want this in, I don't know, 6 millimeters. So you can just type in 6 millimeters, and then boom, it'll do 6 millimeters. Go ahead and create a solid. So we go to features, we'll do extrude boss, make this, I don't know, 2 inches tall. Boom, you got a solid here. Say we want a hole. One thing to note in SolidWorks, it's a little bit different, but first of course we need to create a sketch and just make a standard circle or any other shape that you choose to do. So like I can make a quick weird shape here. And in features, so in SolidWorks they actually separate it. So you see there's extrude boss and we have extrude cut. So if we want to remove material, we're going to do a cut. So we just do extrude cut. It automatically selects these drawing contours, but you can select each individual one as well. If we go to selected contours, we can say just select that only and this only. Or say we want the opposite. We want to remove the outer stuff and keep these inner ones in here. You can do that as well. For now, since we're just going to straight up cut this out, we can go ahead and do a blind, or we can do a through all, which will cut it all the way, or we can just stick to a normal up to surface. And that's what I'll just do here. And boom, we have cuts. It's pretty simple. We have also other features like revolved boss and lofted boss, and I could make another video on that, but for now we'll just stick to the simple shapes for this episode. So let me go back to actually the sketches really quick. And say we have a rectangle here that is also 4 inches by 3 inches. But we notice that it is not necessarily constrained because I can move this part. So one thing you can do in SolidWorks, one, you can just simply just drag it and boom, you lock it in place. But the difference between Inventor and SolidWorks is that when you're doing relationships such as constraints, these are shown in this left corner here. You can actually see that we have 2 coincident lines. That's from these diagonal lines here, and it makes a coincident point. But say I want to coincident the middle point in this without it dragging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the shift button and I'm going to click onto this point and then this point, and then you can see to my left, you see the properties tab here. So what we can do is we can do either a horizontal, vertical, or coincident. If I just want to immediately made it into the center point, we can just do coincident. But say I just want, I don't know, just the horizontal part of it, we can just hit horizontal and boom, we have the horizontal part. Then we could do vertical and then it basically achieves what we wanted to do. But in this case, we can just do a simple coincident made right there. And for example, say I have a line like this. Oh, you can see that it automatically made it horizontal, so we're gonna actually have to, or vertical, so we're gonna have to just delete that like that. So now that we can angle it, and say I want this parallel, same thing, if you hold shift click these two lines. We have options here. We can do a collinear, which will make this linear to it, but I just want to make it parallel, so we're just going to do parallel like that. And we can move it. This is simple enough. Another neat thing you can do as well, and you can do this for pretty much any other thing, any other CAD, but you can just mess with this. You have linear sketch patterns, so we can make like 3 or so and just give it a spacing. So let's just make this, let's make it a 4-inch spacing on each end. So we got that, and then we can also just do the Y as well. If you just make this 3, we can do Y, make this 1-inch spacing, or let's see, let's do, since that's 4 inches, let's do 5 inches. There we go. So it'll create that. And say you want to change your spacing, you can just do that simply by doing a dimension and say I just want this to be, I don't know, 1 inches from each other. Same thing. And the reason why this is not constrained is because of this part. So what we can do is we can hold Shift, click these two lines, and do collinear, just like that. All right. And we have your mirror, and you can mess with that. It's pretty straightforward. We will use the offset a lot. So say I have a part here. We can use the offset entities to offset the material. So we don't make a completely solid part, we just make a normal. You do this, reverse. There we go. So we make like the shell of the part. So make it 1 inch for now. So one thing to note, it actually, this is kind of where it gets tricky. When you already have a solid line, the shaded line, it treats the outer part as shaded, so just keep a note of that, because that's where you could cause any like errors to when you're creating a solid part. So just note that the outer one gets shaded, not the inner ones. Same thing, you can choose what you want to be solid. So you can either select that. If I want to make both, give me a second. There you go. So that's how you would do if you want to extrude both of them solid. In this case, we're just going to stick to the normal setup to where it is. Give me a second. There we go. Now we have this solid piece. Quite simple. And you can sketch in anything that is a flat plane. So just note that if it's curved, you can't sketch on it. So I can sketch on this because it's nice and flat. But when I have a curved feature, so say I make a spherical shape, for example. Hold on, give me a second. Let me delete that. We'll just create, instead of sphere, let's just do a cylinder just to give you an idea of what we should make. Just gonna create a center line, here to here, hold the shift click button, do a midpoint, smart dimension, 9 inches. And just do that. We can create a solid. So we'll do a revolve boss. Just like that. You can of course choose how much degrees you want, but we'll just do the standard 360. Okay. And you can see that I can only sketch here. When I try to sketch on here, it won't let me. And you're probably wondering how I'd put text on there or something, or like add features, and that requires some extra work where you have to mess with creating reference geometry and all that, but I will not go over that in this video as it will be a little bit too much to do. One last bit. We have fillets here, and you can also do linear and circular patterns of features and mirror as well. So let me just do a quick fillet, because this is a tool that we'll mainly use a lot. Just select the edges that you want to fillet, and you can select how much you want to fillet of. So I can do 0.5 for example. Quite simple. Another neat thing you could do with fillets is I can left click on this and it gives me options to do internal features as well. So that way if I want to speed up the process of filleting, you can do that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for tutorial 1. We'll next move on to assembly, and what we'll do actually in episode 2 is start creating a base, or like a drive base of the robot. Alrighty.